Unit 3, page 5, Cellular Respiration. Aim. Why do we eat and breathe? Specific. So on your handout, you'll see 6 questions. Why do we eat food? How does food get into our cells? What organelle uses the nutrients from food? Why do we breathe? How does the oxygen get to our cells? And what organelle uses oxygen? Take a moment now. If you need to, you can pause the video and answer those 6 questions. So why do we eat food? Well, we eat food obviously to get energy. How does the food get to our cells? It's digested into smaller pieces and nutrients diffuse into our blood. What organelle uses these nutrients? The mitochondria use the nutrients to release energy. Why do we breathe? We breathe to get oxygen into our bodies. How does the oxygen get to the cells? Oxygen diffuses into our blood in the alveoli of the lung. You can see a picture on the bottom right of oxygen and also glucose, both in the bloodstream. And finally, number 6, which organelle uses oxygen? The mitochondria use oxygen to release energy. Hopefully you remembered most of this, but if not, we'll review it in this lecture. So cellular respiration is a process that's used by cells in order to release energy from organic molecules. So the organic molecule that we'll be talking about is glucose. The energy that gets released is stored in a molecule called ATP, which stands for adenosine triphosphate. Notice the A from adenosine, tri, T, and P is for phosphate. Triphosphate, just like a tricycle, means 3. So notice there are how many P's here? 3 P's, and an A stands for adenosine. This process is important because it's controlled by enzymes. Using this picture, let's answer the following questions. Number 1, what gas enters the body? Oxygen. Number 2, what other material enters the body here? Glucose, or food. Number 3, what do mitochondria release from these materials? ATP, or energy. Number 5, what is this process called? We just mentioned it, cellular respiration. And 4, what materials leave the cell as waste? Carbon dioxide and water. Chemical equations. The chemical equation in the words oxygen plus glucose yields, that arrow, water plus carbon dioxide plus ATP. If we look at this in symbols, it looks like this. Remember that glucose is C6H12O6. Oxygen is O2, there are 6 molecules, yields 6 molecules of carbon dioxide, 6 molecules of water, and about 38 molecules of ATP. How is this equation related to photosynthesis? So if we look at equation 1, which is photosynthesis, you see carbon dioxide plus water with addition of chlorophyll and sunlight yields sugar and oxygen. Equation 2 is cellular respiration. Sugar plus oxygen yields carbon dioxide and water. Also, it yields energy in the form of ATP. So the reactants and products are opposite for these 2 reactions. Photosynthesis, you notice that carbon dioxide and water go in, but in respiration, it's a product. The products of photosynthesis, sugar and oxygen, are what go in or are the reactants in respiration. So notice that they're opposite each other. So if we compare these 2 processes, there's a few things that are important to consider. The first is their location. So where does photosynthesis happen? It happens in the chloroplast. Remember, those are the green little molecules, the organelles inside of plant cells. How about cell respiration? Where does that occur? Mitochondrion. So the mitochondrion, remember, it has that kind of squiggly shape inside, and those are located in both plant and animal cells. What's the purpose of photosynthesis? It's to make food, or glucose. What's the purpose of cellular respiration? It's to release energy. What are the reactants in photosynthesis? Dioxide, water, and light energy, or sunlight. How about in cell respiration? Sugar, or glucose, and oxygen. The products in photosynthesis, if you remember from the last slide, should match the reactants of cell respiration. So notice, again, sugar, or glucose, and oxygen, just the same as the reactants here. How about the products for cell respiration? Hopefully you remember it's a match with the reactants, with the exception of the light energy here and the ATP, or adenosine triphosphate, here. Joining with them, carbon dioxide and water. The type of organism that does photosynthesis is mainly plants and also algae, which are an aquatic organism that sometimes has a green looking. Cellular respiration happens in both plants and animals. Remember, cellular respiration is what takes that glucose and actually makes it into usable energy. Sometimes we think about this like exchanging money in one currency into another. So when you go to another country, maybe you exchange US dollars for euros or pesos. And it still means the same thing. It's a form of money, and it can be used to purchase things, but it's a different form. So light energy or glucose or ATP, they're all different forms of energy. What's the relationship between these two chemical processes? So if we look at this picture, we see photosynthesis happening in the chloroplast is producing oxygen and glucose, which is then being used in the mitochondrion for cell respiration, which produces carbon dioxide and water, which is used for photosynthesis. So notice that this is like a cycle. It has a circular shape, and this will continue to happen in order to keep all organisms alive. Here's another image showing this balance in the ecosystem of photosynthesis that happens in plants, providing energy for all living things in the process called cellular respiration, which powers most cellular work, and it also produces some heat energy. So notice you've got different forms of energy being used and produced in this reaction. Summary question. Number 1, what are the reactants of cellular respiration? Oxygen and glucose. Number 2, what are the products of cellular respiration? ATP, or energy, carbon dioxide, and water. And finally, number 3, in which organelle does cellular respiration occur? Mitochondrion. If you didn't know these answers, you might want to go back and watch this video one more time.